Hello, everyone. My name is Sarah Samwel. I'm a PhD student at Carleton University at the Department of Journalism and Communications, and I'm very excited today to be presenting my presentation, Faking Facts, the Case of FactCheckerMedia.com, which is based on my master's research. A brief background on FactCheckerMedia.com, which I'll be referring to as FCA. It is a genocide denial website masquerading as a fact checker. Now, of course, that's a very interesting case, those two coming together. So I wanted to investigate the why of this website. Why is it using fact checking? And I wanted to investigate the how. How is it done? And what potential effects it has on its reader. Of course, any website dealing with genocide, we have to look at the long term effects. And I wanted to understand why, the Armenian genocide is still relevant over a century later and how it could be engaging in this new form of what we call memoricide. FCA, again, is an interesting case in that it was established in 2015 around the centennial anniversary of the Armenian genocide, and it has existed since then. It has a very active online presence, particularly on Facebook, with over 60,000 likes, as well as a couple thousand on Twitter. But this idea that it has been able to outlast many other misinformation sites makes it particularly appealing and ripe for research, where misinformation sites tend to be very quick up and down and they're gone. So we have this longer history we can look at. As I was researching, two major tensions began to appear in FCA's content. The first, they want to appear friendly and approachable. You can see that on their homepage, which is still available, versus these more radical, violent ideas where they're demonizing the Armenian people, where if you go into the subpages of the website, you will see those start to emerge. Then the second is this, again, this tension between being a fact checker versus an advocacy website. They are trying to push a certain version of events. So they want you to believe the truth, but it's their truth they want you to believe. So, a quick example, of course, we could get into many of them, but this idea of co option of the genre, they're giving on the website very distinct visual clues, or visual cues rather. So we have on the one hand, the false stamp on this historical photo from the website. And then on the other hand, we have this fact check from BuzzFeed News where they have their, iconic bubble there with the term fake on it. So we can see how they're trying to point to the reader that we're just like them. We're just like these mainstream sites that are trying to check these social media posts. But the main thing I want to spend my time on here is pointing to the flaws within journalistic practice, particularly fact checking. We know journalists are on a deadline, for example. We know they need good sources and they need them quickly, so they often go to academia. But like any source, they have their biases, which can be increasingly difficult to navigate, again, when you're on that deadline. So we see how FCA is trying to play off this concept by using the work of Bernard Lewis and Justin McCarthy and their authority as professors, but divorcing them from their context as Armenian genocide deniers. Secondly, we see this idea of the distillation of complex discourses into these simple binaries of true and false. So, for example, FCA will claim that the Armenian genocide is both complex, but yet there is some information that is true and false. Fact checkers kind of fall into a similar problem. They have to take political discourse and distill them into these true or false binaries. Now, of course, they've tried to address this. Fact checkers have tried to address this through these gradations. PolitiFact has a 6-point scale that starts at true and ends at pants on fire. As well, we are in a different political climate where politicians are just outright lying, so there has to be some version of this. But again, we have to look at the versions of this that are taking things that are much more complex and putting them into these neat categories. So the last thing is that FCA is really challenging this notion that good information will prevail and that flooding social media sites with good information will eventually succeed. Misinformation purveyors are always one step ahead. This website was established in 2015 before we were talking about fake news. So they are now pushing their own fake news and pushing their own fake fact checker to verify that fake news. So we're seeing this further closing off of these information communities that we need to address. And of course, with any site dealing with the concept of genocide, we have to look at the legacy it's leaving. So we're seeing this change in this concept of memoricide. So memoricide used to refer to the destruction of memory institutions such as museums, archives, libraries, to erase the cultural knowledge of this group of people by the perpetrator. But in the digital age, we know that's a little bit more challenging. We can put that information online, it can be archived online, and it can be put out of the hands of the perpetrator. So, what we see instead is this idea of competing narratives that FCA is trying to become an agent of memoricide to say that they are true and Armenians are false, or the Armenian narrative is false, and that um, it becomes this competition rather. Of course, we have to look for the future. We have to look at what next. We have to look at strategies beyond fact checking to help readers combat misinformation online if we're truly concerned. We've thought about media literacy, but the onus on the individual is increasingly difficult. Filtering out information on social media sites has challenges concerning freedom of speech, as well as backlash against social media users. We need to look at ways to address the journalistic flaws within fact checking that FCA is exploiting and exposing. No practice is perfect, of course, so we have to have a more robust discussion about how can we start to make this process more streamlined, more verifiable, more correct. As well, there are implications, again, for how denial will change in the digital age, which we're seeing it now with the Armenian genocide. But as we lose survivors from other genocides, such as the Holocaust or the Rwandan genocide, we're going to see a transfer to these groups as well. So there's a lot of things that this website is pointing towards that we can start to have a discussion about. And I think we need to have that discussion. That's it for me. Thank you so much. I look forward to your questions. Have a great conference, everyone.